Hey, welcome back, everybody. Now, I'm awfully proud to say that we haven't been flooding you with COVID news lately, but there are several points of interest we've come up against recently, so let's take stock in where we're at with some COVID updates. But in an effort to touch on things that are near and dear to our hearts, we have one that involves politics, one that involves education, and one that involves football. My name's Ike Morgan, and we're down in Alabama. Alabama Governor Kay Ivey has fired back at President Joe Biden's COVID-19 vaccine mandate for federal contractors and employees with an order of her own, reports AL.com's Amy Yurkanin. Now, calling Biden's policies government overreach, Ivey issued an order directing Alabama state agencies to not enforce the federal vaccine mandate, which would go into effect on December 8th. Of course, Alabama is not the only state challenging the federal rules here, and Ivey's order doesn't go as far as, for example, the Texas version, which prohibits employers from requiring the vaccine. But what the Ivey order essentially does is to direct state agencies to resist the mandate and to not penalize businesses or individuals for noncompliance wherever legally possible. Now, if they have to issue penalties, they are to notify the non-compliant that the state of Alabama does not condone the penalty. From the order, quote, "It is therefore the policy of my administration to encourage COVID-19 vaccinations as safe and effective, but to oppose overreaching COVID-19 vaccination mandates imposed by the government." Now, a spokesperson for the University of Alabama system said that its schools still plan to follow the federal mandate for contractors, citing the risk of losing federal funding and federally funded jobs. Auburn University is one of the institutions of higher learning in Alabama that has acknowledged it will comply with the federal COVID-19 vaccination mandate. The deadline for compliance is December 8th, and Auburn considers someone to be fully vaccinated 2 weeks after they receive their final dose of whatever vaccine they get. Now, that means they'll need to receive their final doses by November 24th. There's one high-profile Auburn employee who has not yet disclosed whether he's received a vaccine or whether he plans to get one, namely football coach Bryan Harsin. AL.com's Tom Green reports that Harsin again on Monday refused to address his vaccination status. Harsin said, quote, "I'm aware of the new policy. I appreciate you have to ask the question and understand it, but it doesn't change. I mean, the executive order, all those things, it doesn't change the fact I'm not going to discuss any individual's decision or status on the vaccine or anyone else's, including my own, like I said before," end quote. Now, the reason the question does have to be asked, like he said, and that it will be a news story, is that if he hasn't already, he'll have to either provide proof of vaccination or receive an exemption by December 8th, or he could face termination. We've already seen that situation go down at Washington State. Termination would be a big deal for any of us. Harsin, of course, has just gotten started on a 6-year, $31.5 million deal with Auburn. Now, in this segment, we'll stick with COVID news, but stay away from anything as controversial as football coaches and vaccines. Let's talk about masks in schools. Here in the state of Alabama, we've crossed a bit of a threshold as new COVID-19 cases and hospitalizations continue to fall. That threshold being that more than half of Alabama school districts have ended, are ending, or never had mask requirements, reports AL.com's Ruth Servan-Smith. 70 school districts are still requiring masks for most students and staff, and federal rules still require masks on school buses. The latest systems that have announced plans to stop the requirements include Chickasaw City, Clark County, Coffee County, Decatur City, Enterprise City, Lee County, and Piedmont City schools. So kids, as here and there, we're likely to be moving away from some of the more overt mitigation practices. Y'all don't forget the basics, especially during flu season. Those include staying home if you're sick at all, and I'll bet we'll take that one more seriously than we did before the pandemic. Also, coughing into the crook of your arm and washing your hands with soap long enough to sing the chorus of Sweet Home Alabama twice. Thank y'all so much for listening. And welcome to any Huntsville folks listening via the Lead app. That's L-E-D-E, the Lead. The Lead's a great place for local news in a day when so many people get whatever news shows up on their Facebook feeds. we're all about good local news sources. So North Alabama folks, check that out. And if you're already there and discovering this podcast, again, I appreciate so much having you here. Now, we'll only take up about 3 to 5 minutes or so a day and hit you with a handful of stories that are usually of statewide Alabama interest. It might help if you bring a sense of humor. We take the news seriously, but not ourselves always. There's enough of that out there already. We'll be back here tomorrow. Until then, y'all come on by and see us on the internet anytime you want to at AL.com.